everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Asana training session today. My name is Katie Sabalas, and I'm one of our customer success managers here at Asana. And today I'm delighted to be joined again by our friend and peer, Paul Miners. He's going to be sharing several practices and tips about how to ease your team into Asana. So he'll be sharing several things that you can share with your team, as well as several practices that you can implement in order to help facilitate the onboarding of your team into Asana for work tracking and productivity management. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Paul. Paul is a productivity blogger and coach. He's the host of the Productivity Podcast and has written extensively about how you can increase your productivity both for your own individual use as well as for your business. And he's also been implementing several different types of training sessions specifically on Asana, as well as writing extensively about how to use Asana with your business. So I'm delighted to have him here with us today. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Hey, Katie. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, our pleasure always. And with that, I'm going to kick the presenter all over to you, and we're going to hop into Asana to look at what we're going to cover today.
Great, okay. Fantastic. Okay, so I'll just quickly start by running us through the agenda for today. So as you can see in my subtasks here, we're going to be talking about, firstly, setting very clear expectations in the team. Number two, sending kind of check Asana reminders to your staff, which is something one of my previous consulting clients started to do and worked really well. We're looking to talk about using an onboarding project to train staff on the best practices of Asana. Some common mistakes that I've seen people get caught out by, and these are things that you can just warn your team about to help people kind of avoid some common mistakes when using Asana and getting started. We're going to talk about just a very quick tip around how to quickly assign tasks to people that don't necessarily belong in a project. I see that's like quite a common question that keeps coming up. I'm going to talk about using email and forwarding email to Asana, which is really useful for helping to manage the transition and moving communication, your internal communication, away from email and into Asana. So we're going to look at that. We're going to talk briefly about running meetings in Asana, which is a really great way because we all know how unproductive meetings can be if they're not planned out and executed effectively. So we're going to talk about how you can use use Asana to run your meetings. And then finally, we're going to talk about excuse me, how to deal with some of the inbox noise and the overwhelm that can come from the inbox and which settings you can tweak and things like that. And really, the agenda for today has kind of been determined by my experience working with a few consulting clients over the last couple of months as I've helped some businesses and entrepreneurs to just improve their use of Asana and their team's use of Asana. These are the things that I've found have come up kind of as some of the most important challenges and issues that we've had to overcome. So yeah, hopefully people benefit from the training today. And I guess if you have any questions, Katie, feel free to interrupt me as we go along.
Great, fantastic. And everyone, for questions, feel free to put those in the GoToWebinar dialog box throughout the session if you have questions on specific topics we're covering, and we'll leave time at the end for questions as well.
Awesome. Katie, would you like me to check these tasks off as complete once I talk about them?
Yeah, whatever works well for you. That should be great.
Okay. Or maybe I'll leave them and then we can always flick back if we need to. Okay. So topic number one, starting by talking about setting very clear expectations with Asana. So the gist here is that when you're first getting started with Asana, I think it's really important to very clearly communicate to your team what Asana is and how it's going to be used and how it's going to fit into your team's existing workflow. So will it be used for managing all kind of projects within your business? Is it going to be used just for client work? Is it just going to be used for a certain aspect of your business? Answering these kind of questions and setting the expectation giving that expectation to your staff is really important in the beginning. And yes, just firstly deciding how Asana is going to be used, how it's going to fit in is really important, because some people I've seen might start by using Asana for just client work, and that's like quite a nice way to just kind of dip your toes in the water. They have projects for some of their clients that they're helping, and they're using Asana in their team to manage those clients versus jumping in to using it for everything straight away. So that's totally fine as well as just using Asana for one element of your business when you just begin, but then slowly maybe rolling that out into other departments or areas of your business as you and your team get more comfortable using it. Part of setting expectations an important part of that is deciding how communication is going to be managed, because obviously there are a lot of tools in Asana, like we've got the commenting features, the conversation views. There's lots of different ways that you can communicate, and so you need to decide how communication is going to be managed, and again, communicate that expectation to the team. If you just jump into Asana and start commenting a little bit, but then there's still a little bit of email going on, people may get confused about when do I post in Asana versus when do I send an email. It's much easier, and you're going to avoid kind of miscommunication by setting the expectation very clearly in the beginning. So deciding how are we going to manage communication. The general recommendation is to move communication from email into Asana. And if you continue to receive email from staff or questions, you can politely remind them to create a task or post a comment in Asana as just a way of like bringing them back into the Asana environment. And you should also think about how Asana and the communication is going to fit with other tools that you use, like Slack, for example. Slack's obviously a really popular instant messaging app now. And my suggestion, and what I've found to work best with the clients that I've spent time with, is that all task-related communication, all kind of action-orientated communication and questions about work and work-related communication, which is probably going to be like 80% of your internal communication, should happen in Asana. And it's probably going to happen down here in the comments section. Any like quick urgent questions, queries, and like maybe you're on the phone and need an answer for something quickly, all that kind of spontaneous chat, that's really good for Slack, where you can get a quick response. But like a question or a comment that's related to the work should go into Asana, and it can go into the relevant task, and that way you have a really nice thread of history of communication and questions related to the work. So that's my recommendation. It's what we found to be best, is all work-related questions, comments, communication happens in the tasks in the comments section, and then quick queries and questions and spontaneous chat happens in Slack. Where does email fit in? I guess you might be asking. Email really for internal shouldn't be used that much, if at all. You've obviously got the team conversation area and the project conversation area where you can kind of communicate more broadly to your team. But really, email can then become primarily used for just external communication, and you can minimize the amount of email you have to deal with by making that switch. Something that I found worked well with a particular client was setting a due date for making the switch to Asana. So instead of just saying, hey guys, this is Asana, we're using it now, and everyone kind of switching cold turkey and having to kind of jump on board really quickly, he actually set a due date and said, okay, guys, on the 1st of December, we're going to be using Asana exclusively for all our communication. All work is going to be managed in here. You've got between now and then to kind of get familiar with it, ask any questions, work out how to use it. We're still going to use email between now and then, and Slack as well. But on December 1st, that's when we're going to go full throttle to the floor on using Asana. And it just gives staff a bit of time to adjust and learn without just being thrown in the deep end, and where they're expected to just like catch up and get using it straight away without any kind of transition time. So it's a nice idea, I think, setting a bit of a due date for making that switch to just help people, as the topic of today is, like ease into Asana. We're not throwing them in the deep end. And the final point for this section is to just set the expectation that you're taking Asana seriously. You expect the team to use it to manage their work going forward, and yeah, it's like this is going to be how we manage our tasks, manage our projects, and do our communication. So obviously there are going to be some people who may not like the change to begin with. Probably they just need to spend a bit more time learning why Asana is so good. But yeah, I think it's important to set that expectation, make it very clear that look, we're using Asana, it's really important, we're using it to help you to streamline communication, to allow us to be more productive as a team, and so if you have any questions, let us know, and we're taking this seriously. So those are my main points for setting clear expectations.
And Paul, we have a question on that, on specifically the communication piece. A question from Andrea about whether you recommend, you mentioned having communications mainly in comments. She wants to know where you should use conversations and what types of threads should be had in the conversations area in Asana.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I find with the different areas you can comment in Asana, I find most of the time you'll use comments. And the occasion you would use this would be when you have a very specific question or comment related to a task. And so you should always, I feel, have the conversation at the most granular level that you can. So if it's a question or a comment related to a task, related to a specific piece of work, it goes in the comments.
Right.
Then obviously we have the project conversation area. So if I clicked on this tab up here, I'd get to my, I'll click on it now. You get to the project conversations. Obviously there's nothing in there now. But this would be where you would post general comments and questions related to the project as a whole. So for example, if I have a project where we're planning like a product launch I have a question or comment that's not related to any specific piece of work, but it's just like, hey guys, how is the project going? Or do we need to revisit the expected due date of our launch or something like that? I could post that here because it's like a project level kind of question. And this is a great place for like updates and keeping everyone on task related to the project. And then we have the team conversation area. So we're in the Asana Ascents team here. So this would be, you know, we could have a bunch of projects here. You know, you might have your product launch, your meeting minutes, and all that kind of thing. This would be where you can update your team as a whole. So think of an example. It might even just be something as casual as, hey guys, team lunch this weekend or something, or it's just that team level discussion. So hopefully I've explained that clearly, but it's starting with the more granular level and then working your way up the kind of hierarchy based on the type of conversation that you're having, if that makes sense.
Certainly, yeah, and team conversations might be akin to something you'd be sending to a distribution list in an email today, whereas here you can track that with everything else in the team conversations. But I think that distinction Paul went over is definitely what we recommend on our end as well.
Yeah, and another example I think is like in one of my old jobs, we had like a staff email address, and it was just if you emailed staff@company.com, an email would go to the whole staff, and it's a great way of notifying everyone of something all at once. So the team conversation area is a great kind of replacement for that. If you have like a staff email address or a kind of a company announcement, you can put it in those team conversation areas.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Moving on to the second section, so sending check Asana reminders. So this is, as I said, this is something that one of my previous clients did. Worked really well. So as I've helped people, I found that two of the biggest challenges that new users face when getting started with Asana are these two things. So firstly, identifying what they need to do. People feel that they need to dive through all their projects to try and find their tasks. They actually forget that the My Tasks section up here is actually the best place to kind of get that summary of what you need to work on. And using that section really well, using the today, upcoming, later section really effectively is one of the best things that you can do to keep on top of those tasks that you need to do. That's the first challenge I see people facing. The second is keeping up to date with notifications and messages. In the inbox here, there's obviously lots of notifications coming in related to task updates and things. It can get a bit overwhelming, especially if people aren't archiving those messages, and that's really the trip up that people kind of sometimes make. And so what the client I was working on did is we wanted to remind people to really address these two things regularly throughout the day to make sure they were keeping on top of things. So what he would do is he would send a reminder on, I think it was email or it could have been Slack or something, and he would literally say, guys, this was every few hours throughout the day for the first couple of weeks. It was literally, hey guys, go and check Asana. And when he said go and check Asana, what you had to do was go into your My Tasks. I actually don't have anything in here now, but if you go into your My Tasks, you'll have a bunch of new tasks, or you might have a bunch of new tasks that have the blue dot next to them. And it's important to then triage and sort those things into those three sections. So anything due today, you can put in your today section. Anything due in the next kind of 7 days, put in that upcoming section. And then anything due more than 7 days out, you can mark for later. And so that was the first thing, was just going into the My Tasks, reviewing any new tasks that have come in and sorting them into with those appropriate sections. And as well, just revisiting what you have to do today. People often get distracted, you know, colleagues ask them a question or they get distracted throughout the day. So just revisiting those My Tasks, reminding yourself of what to do. So that's the first thing the reminder helped with, was just keeping on top of those My Tasks and the new tasks that are coming in. And then the second one was just keeping an eye on the inbox up here. So just looking at any notifications that have come in and archiving them if they've been dealt with. So I'll see if I can just find an example of an old notification. If I bring this back to the inbox here, so here's like a new notification. Kate's liked my comment, that's great. Don't really need to do anything with this, so I'm just going to archive it. I'm going to click the archive button here, and now I've cleared my notifications. And so that was the second real purpose of that reminder, was just reminding people, jump in here, look at any new notifications that have come in. You can archive any that you don't need to look at, and you can respond to any comments that you've got as well. So that was the kind of the purpose of the reminder. My suggestion is you can use Slack. If your company uses Slack, you can post in the general channel and kind of use the @everyone or @channel to quickly notify everyone. Or you could use email. A tip for using email is you can use Boomerang Boomerang is a Gmail plugin which basically lets you schedule emails in advance. So if you don't want to be, having to send these reminders every few hours, you could actually schedule a couple of reminders throughout the day and just schedule them using Boomerang to have these reminders go out at set times. I do have a template available, so here's like an email template that you can use. If you want to copy this email template, this reminder template, I do have a cheat sheet for this whole webinar, which will be available on my website which you can download. So if you want to get access to the cheat sheet and this template, we'll have details of that coming up at the end, but you can just copy and paste this and rework it if you need to basically just quickly remind your team of those two main things that they need to be checking throughout the day. So that's the check Asana reminders. Katie, were there any questions regarding that?
Yes, we have a question from Amy about whether you can mass clear or archive your inbox so you can start from fresh. Because I know a lot of folks, as they're getting in the habit of Asana, they don't go there, and then it can be thousands of messages that have piled up. So would you mind showing her the archive all option that's in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Often, yeah, when people have been neglecting this for a while, you can have a lot of things. So obviously, what I did before was I just archived the individual task here, but there is the archive all button up here. So if I click that, every single notification would be archived. And so that's a great way of just kind of quickly wiping the slate clean if you need to. The other thing I'll point out actually is this option here, the snooze button. So this feature isn't actually enabled by default, but if you come up to your settings and if you go into hacks, there's an inbox snooze feature that you can enable. And what this does is it means you can hide all notifications for an hour. So if you just want to get some kind of focused work done and not be distracted by those notifications, you can use this snooze feature as well. So that's kind of handy.
Great.
Okay, so moving on, section 3, using an onboarding project to train staff. So this is a really nice way of inducting people into the Asana environment and getting them familiar with common features and features just that they'll have to use really. And so we've set up an Asana onboarding template that you can use, I think this is actually, Katie, this one, is this the template that's coming out in the new template features coming soon?
There is a template like this, yes, and we also have this on the customer success side if they want to see this.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is a downloadable template that people can get access to, but essentially what people can do is they can duplicate this project, so you can use the copy project option, and every single staff member can create their own version of this project, which they can then go through. And so they can go through the project task by task and read the description here to basically follow the steps to get familiar with Asana. So there's a few things before we dive in, and then there's tasks related to kind of each of the main features that people need to learn about. So joining teams, creating projects, tasks, assigning tasks, and each employee, each team member can basically go through their project, read the description of what the feature is, and there's really good descriptions here that describes everything they need to do, and then just mark the task as complete once they've read that task, once they've taken the action to just have a little quick go with the feature. So this template is a really useful way of getting your team set up and familiar with the Asana environment instead of just dropping people in and hoping that they can swim and they have to just kind of figure things out for themselves. The Asana onboarding template is a really great place for just easing people into Asana and guiding them through the main features that they're going to be needing. And it's going to save them a lot of time. It's going to save them a lot of questions, because a lot of the questions they probably have related to, how do I find this? How do I do that? Are going to be answered in that template. So as I said, have each team member duplicate the project so that they can, they can have their own tasks to go through. If they just went in here and started ticking them off, obviously everyone would see that those tasks have been done. So it is important to duplicate the project, and then they can just complete the action steps as they go to get familiar with those main features of Asana. All good. Number 4, so here are some common mistakes that I've seen people kind of fall victim to when they first get started with Asana. So the first one is using projects for personal to-dos. This seems to be a common one. So often what people will do is they'll have all the different projects that they're part of in the team, but then they're like, oh, I need somewhere to just do my own, manage my own personal to-do list. I just want somewhere where I can just put my tasks. And so they'll create a project, like pulled tasks or pulled to-do lists, and they start putting things in there. What you need to remember, though, is actually the better place to manage those to-do lists is in the My Tasks section. That's really what that section is designed for. It's a summary of, obviously, all of the tasks that are assigned to you across all of the different projects that you're part of. So it's all of those tasks in one place, but it can serve as your personal to-do list as well. And so any tasks that you create in the My Tasks section are private to you. So if I went in here and I created one now, create task, I can see I'm the only follower of this task. It even says up here the task is private, and it's not part of any project. So I can basically create my own personal to-do list of things that I want to do. They don't have to go into a particular project. They just live in the My Tasks area, and it means that it's just a nice place to manage your personal to-do list rather than creating your own own project for your to-dos. So that's a useful feature, is just getting familiar with My Tasks and using that. Another common mistake, I mentioned it before, is not sorting the new tasks. So any new tasks that get assigned to me would show up in here as a new task. So here are some that have just come in. So I can see that they're new tasks. They've got the blue dot next to them. It shows it's just been assigned to me. So what I can now do is click the blue dot, and I can mark it for one of these sections. So if this is something I want to work on maybe tomorrow or in the next week or so, I can mark it for upcoming. And maybe I've got the training agenda, I want to do that today, so I'll mark it for today. Or in fact, it was due yesterday, so I really should do it today. This one, for example, not that urgent, I'll do it later. So I'm going to mark that for later. And now these are the 3 main sections we've got here now. The one that I marked for later is still viewable. It's just buried in this later section. It means that it's hidden from view. I don't have to worry about it until this task falls due. This task actually doesn't have a due date, so what that means is it won't flow up into these sections. What I would need to do is set a due date for this. So if I set this for 2 weeks out, it means that next Friday, or Thursday, sorry, for US, next Thursday, this will pop up in my upcoming section as it falls 7 days away from being due. And then on the day it falls due, it will automatically move up into the today section. So that's really the main thing here, is just sorting those new tasks, because what I see quite often is people have lots of new tasks, they don't really sort them, and they just end up with one long list of things to do, and it's very hard to go through that list and work out, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do today? What's important? It's very hard to look at that list and know. So just sorting those tasks into these sections based on when they're due is a really nice way of keeping things organized, so that you can very quickly identify what's important, what's urgent, based on when it's due. Okay. Next mistake I see people making is not archiving those inbox notifications. I mentioned it earlier, but really this is a big one. People need to archive those notifications, including comments as well, not just, you obviously get notifications about people liking your comments or assigning you tasks, but even those comment ones as well, it's important to archive them once you've dealt with them. You can absolutely leave them in your inbox while you're still working on them, but once you've dealt with it, as you would with regular email, or as I would recommend you do with regular email is once you've dealt with an email is archive it, get it out of the inbox. And it's just, it makes it easier to identify the new things that are coming in that you haven't addressed yet. Whereas if you just leave a long list of notifications that you haven't archived, again, it just gets quite hard to identify what do I need to do now, or what do I need to respond to now. So just being very active and conscious about archiving those notifications is really important. Another common mistake is reverting back to email. So as people are getting familiar with Asana, maybe not so comfortable with commenting or not sure where to comment or use the conversations, people might feel like, oh, I'm just going to send this person an email asking for feedback or asking for approval on something. So because email is comfortable, right? They know that if I send an email, I'm going to get a reply. I know how email works. I don't need to worry about it. So they revert back to email. This is a common mistake, but my response is, yeah, obviously persevere. If you're having any issues with Asana, you can follow up with your team leader or manager and go through any issues that you're having. And if you are the person training people, obviously be aware of any issues that people might have. And if people are defaulting back to email, as I'll kind of talk about in a few tasks time, we can use the forwarding email to Asana option to bring them back into the Asana environment. But what I would suggest as well is, yeah, you can comment and you can add the person's name in here to then loop them back into the conversation and just kind of remind them that Asana is really where we need to be having those conversations. And finally, the final kind of project I see people make is when they first get started with Asana, they get really excited, they create lots and lots of projects. I find that they end up with a long list of projects that they need to kind of keep on top of and start managing, and it can get a bit overwhelming with all these different projects. Often as well, these are projects with a very small number of tasks in them, and so the solution is to use, instead of having lots of projects with only a couple of tasks, is to use the hierarchy features of Asana. So what I mean is, obviously we're in the project here, that's kind of the kind of top level of our hierarchy. We've then, in this project, we've got sections here, and as a reminder, if you're not familiar, the way you can create a section is you just type your section name and you add a semicolon to the end, and that will format the section. So that's the second way that you can add a level of organization to your project, is by creating these sections. And these sections can be anything, based on your project. So in this presentation project, I've obviously got excuse me, the agenda of the project. But if I have like a content calendar, for example, I might have months of the year, June, July, to organize my content that's being produced. Or I might have, if I've got like a bug tracking project, I might even have sections for high, medium, and low priority bugs that need fixing. The sections can be anything you want based on how you want to organize those tasks. And then finally, obviously you've got the task itself, that is part of the hierarchy, and then you've got the subtasks. If I look at this one here, I'm adding even more, another level of organization to the work by creating these subtasks. So these are all things that I need to do to satisfy this task. And something that I found some people aren't aware of is you can even add sections to subtasks. So if I, just as I would with a project, I can create a section just by adding a semicolon, and now you can see really I've got lots of different levels of organization. I've obviously got the project, I've got the task itself, the sections within the task, and then the subtasks. So really you can add a lot of levels of organization to your projects in order to kind of overcome this issue, which is creating too many projects. I find when you have fewer projects to manage, it's easier to just keep on top of what's going on. It's easier to keep the team focused because they're not having to go through lots of different places to find their tasks and to find what the most important things, or to just be up to date on all these projects. I think it's a lot less overwhelming for everyone if you have a couple of concise projects with a nice hierarchy set up where you're managing all your work. So moving on, so okay, this is a quick tip, which is how to assign a task that doesn't belong in a project. So this is a situation where you have something you want someone to do. It's just, I want John to do this. It doesn't really belong in a project. I just want John to do this quick thing. It's pretty casual, pretty kind of random task. The best way to do that, rather than trying to like find a project for it to go in, is you can just click the quick add button up here. I can create a new task, and instead of assigning this to myself, I'm going to assign it to Katie. just leave the project blank, and I can be like, Katie, can you please do this task? And then I can just create a task. It gets added to Katie's My Tasks. So because it's not part of any project, it'll be added to Katie's My Tasks. And that's just like a very quick, simple way that I can just give someone something to do that doesn't necessarily belong in a project. So yeah, it can just be like a nice way of kind of overcoming that issue. The other thing as well is like this can help you avoid having to send an email. So if you feel like, oh, I just need someone to do this, I might send an email. Again, try not to revert back to email if you can. If you've got something you need to say to someone, or something you need, generally something you need people to do, because people, with email, there's generally some kind of action they need to take. So it's just use that quick add section, create a new task to avoid the need to send that email. As I mentioned earlier, people will feel tempted to revert back to email. So one of the ways of encouraging your team or to come back to Asana to continue to live in the Asana environment is to use the forwarding email to Asana feature. So if you forward any email to this address here, x@mail.asana.com, all you need to do is, from your email client, click forward it to this address. Asana will recognize what email you're sending it from, so it knows that it's going into your account. And then basically it will create a task with the subject of the email becomes the task name up here, and the body of the email will form the description. So if you do get an email from a staff member, they're not comfortable with Asana, they've sent you an email because they've panicked, what you can do is forward it to Asana. I would then add the person as a follower. So if Katie had sent me an email, I could add her as a follower down here, and then I can respond to her with a comment. So rather than replying to the email, I can just respond with a comment down here. And so this is a really nice way of just gently, subtly pulling people back into Asana and reminding them that, hey, don't send the email. Asana is where we're doing our communication. Or even if they've sent like a genuine email that they've asked you something that does warrant an email, it's just a nice way of decluttering your email inbox and turning those emails into actionable tasks that you can come back to later, that you can work on. So forwarding all those emails into Asana just makes them, I feel, more actionable, because you can assign a due date to it, assign it to a person, and really take action on that email. Whereas if you just leave it in your inbox, it's quite easy to ignore or procrastinate on it. So that's a really good feature. Yep.
Sorry, we have a question from Charles on that, on whether you should forward all emails or whether it's specific emails that you recommend.
Yeah, good question. I don't really have a black and white answer for that, I'm afraid. I think it really does depend on the email that you're receiving. If you want to be quite strict about managing your team's communication in Asana, I think it's quite a good idea to try and, if people are asking you lots of questions and things via email, forward those emails to Asana, and then just remind them in the comments, hey John, please remember to post any questions you have directly in Asana rather than email. If it's something different, like I don't know, like a company announcement, for example, you may not want to forward that to Asana because it's not really relevant. But you could even just respond to the email and remind people, hey, instead of using the email as for company announcements, we do have the team conversation area that you can use instead. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Like I said, it really does kind of depend. If you do get lots of email as well, it might get a little bit overwhelming if you start forwarding every single email into Asana. I would really be forwarding the ones that are actionable, that you need to take some action on, or that you're going to have some kind of conversation on with a staff member.
Right. Yeah, and certainly for external emails where you're communicating with someone that's not in Asana, you can still have those conversations in email as well.
Exactly, yeah. Like client conversations and things, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so moving on. Running meetings with Asana. As I said earlier, running meetings or using Asana to run your meetings is a really nice way of just making your meetings a lot more productive, because it's very easy. We've all been there where we've been invited to a meeting. You go in, you chat for an hour, because all meetings tend to go for an hour. That's the default time. And you kind of leave, and you've got a general sense of what you need to do, but no real action points. It's not that specific. And you kind of leave, and a week later, nothing's really been done. Using Asana to add some structure to your meetings can be really useful. So one of the things we suggest you start by doing is creating an email template. So for example, this project here is a very simple template that you can use, and I've just got a section for the agenda of the meeting, so I can add tasks to the agenda as I'm planning the meeting, like these are the things that we need to discuss. I can then use the notes section to discuss, to write down any notes of things that I want to note down while we're talking. And at the end here, you can list the action steps that you want people to take. And obviously, because this list will contain tasks, you can assign these tasks to specific people, you can give it a specific date, and so really it's a great way to turn meetings or create actionable, next actions from your meeting discussion points. The other thing you can do as well is in the agenda, when you're planning the meeting, you can add tasks from other projects. So for example, if I come back here and during the meeting I want to talk about this task, what I can do is I can click the pen icon up here to edit the projects. I can click the plus button to add a new project, and then what I'll do is I'll just start typing the name of the project. So I'll just add it to the template just for an example, and now you can see, and if I add it to the agenda section, if I click here, I can now access this task from this project. This isn't a duplicate task, it's the same task, but I can just access it from two different places. And so now what I can do is I can plan my meeting around the different tasks in my projects. And so we can talk about this task, we can make any updates, we can leave comments for people while we're in the meeting. And in the meeting we might decide, hey, actually we've done this task now, we're going to mark it as complete. And even if you mark it as complete from this template or from the meeting project, it will be marked as complete in any other projects that it's part of as well. So that's a really nice way to create your agenda, is by going through any projects that you want to discuss and actually adding the task to multiple projects. If I go back to my project, where was I? So here's an example of a kind of a project that's been built out. So just we've got like an agenda. Here are some tasks that we've added to the agenda, some next actions, we've got some notes, obviously some things that have been assigned to people, so hopefully it gives you a little bit of an idea of what like a finished project might look like. But my suggestion would be you use the template. So you can see here I've got like a naming convention for the date. So what I would do when planning a new meeting is I would copy the project, I can copy specific details and I can rename it. So I could say, okay, this is the 2016 11:15 meeting, and then I can create a new project. That's my meeting, so it's got a very clear naming convention. We know when the meeting is. I could call it marketing meeting or whatever it might need to be. And now I've got a duplicate of this project, which I can now start to plan for the meeting. The template is just there for you to quickly, it's just really there to give you the foundation of your meeting, just with these sections. But you would duplicate the template and then build out the agenda for your meeting before you go in. All right. So yeah, obviously you've got the agenda for planning your meeting, adding tasks in. You can run the meeting using those notes, and then, as I said, assign any action points. Assign any action points to people after the meeting. And actually, one final point I'll make is that if I do create any action points here, so this task I've created for Katie, I could, as well as having it in here, maybe I want to add that to any relevant projects as well. So instead of having it just live in the meeting project, maybe this is something related to, let's just call it the How to Ease Your Team into Asana project. I can add that in here. So now the work is tied to the specific project that it's related to. So I can add that there as well. That would be my suggestion, as well as any action points, try and add them to any relevant projects as well. Yeah. Are there any questions around the meetings, Katie?
No, none around the meeting specifically. We have a more general question, but we can wait till the end for that.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Right, so moving on, final kind of section of the day is dealing with inbox noise. As I mentioned, the inbox can get a little bit overwhelming. It is one of those problem areas for people when they're first getting introduced to Asana. So I suggest people get comfortable and familiar with how to customize some of the project notifications. So often what happens is people get notified of every new task that gets created in a project. Even if that task isn't assigned to them, they might get notified of a new task that's created just because they're part of the project. And that's one of the things that people can get a little bit overwhelmed by. So if you come up here, we're in the project settings. If I come up to add, I can click on member notification settings and customize which types of update I will get notified about. So at the moment, I'm going to get notified of status updates, any conversations, and task creations. So this is the one I was talking about. Any new tasks that gets created, so if Kate creates a task in this project, maybe it's not even assigned to me, I'm actually going to get notified. And I'm not really interested in that, so I'm going to turn that off. And that way it's going to reduce a lot of the inbox noise that I'm exposed to. The other updates that you saw, there was obviously the conversations, which are any comments posted in here. I recommend keeping that turned on. And then the progress as well. So project owners can actually post updates to the project and say, you know, hey guys, how's it going? We're doing really well. Whatever they need to say. I recommend keeping that turned on as well. But going through your different projects and turning off the task creation notification, I think, is a good way to minimize some of the noise that you have to deal with in the inbox. The other thing that you can do is unfollow any tasks that you're no longer interested in. So for example, sometimes you might get looped into a conversation in the comments, somebody might mention your name, and so you get looped into the conversation, and now you've kind of given your feedback, you're not really part of it anymore, but you're still getting notified because you're a follower. So what you can do is just click the X here on your face to remove yourself as a follower. So now I'm not going to get notified of any more updates related to this task because I'm not a follower. So just being aware that that is something you can do. If you're getting lots of notifications about things that aren't really relevant anymore, you can unfollow a project to reduce some of that noise as well. So that's it for the inbox noise. Katie, did you want to go through any final questions before I give people details on the cheat sheet?
Yes, yeah, we have a few great questions. One is from Marcio, and he wants to know, you mentioned that you can just quickly add tasks for people that are like one-off requests for people, but he wants to know how you would follow up and find all of those to stay updated on how they're progressing. So I'm hoping you to talk through like how to search for those as well as how you're going to be a follower so you'll get updates about those coming in.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. So for example, if I assign a task to Katie, I'll do that now quickly. So if I go Katie, and we're going to call it new task. I'm going to create that. It's not part of any project, so it's just gone to her My Tasks. What I can do is click on Katie's face up here in the team. I can then view her tasks. Now, I'm not going to see everything. Any tasks that Katie has created that are private to her, I can't see those. But any that are part of a project that I'm part of, where it's like a public project and I have access to that project, I can see those, as well as this new task that I've just created. So I can see that I'm a follower down here, and obviously the task is assigned to Katie. So that's the first place, is you can just click on the person's name. The other thing you can do is use the search fields up here. So you can, it's actually a default option, is tasks and conversations I'm following. So you can just click on that search, and this will just show you any tasks that you are following. You could also get more specific, so you could say tasks that I'm following that I've assigned as well. So let me see, I could go me, where I am a follower by Paul, assigned by Paul. So if I search now, I can make this a lot more granular, and there we go. There's the same task that I created for Katie. Because I assigned this and I'm a follower, it shows up in this search. What I might do now is click the star up here to favorite this search, and you can see it's actually saved on the top left up here in my favorites section, so I can always view this custom search. I could even rename this as well. I could even just call this like follow-up. These are the things that I want to follow up, the tasks that I've assigned that I'm a follower of. So that's the other place you can do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, it seems like Marcio likes that answer. Great. We have a question from David, a few questions, but one about if you have suggestions or tips on using Asana to manage projects when you're in a big company and others are not using Asana. So how you might manage, like, for other teams that might not be in Asana but are still in your company, and what you would recommend for that.
Yeah, so they're not using Asana at all, you mean?
Right.
God, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Let me think. I suppose.
Sorry, go ahead.
I suppose, I mean, Oh, I was just going to say, like, there's a few things. I mean, if people aren't using Asana within their day-to-day work and they're not really part of all the different teams and projects you've got set up, you can invite people as guests to different projects.
Right.
That could be one option, just so that you can they have access to just that project, and maybe you can just ask them anything, and they can just get access to that one project. I don't know, Katie, what would your suggestion be?
Yeah, I think a lot of this goes into your very first point on the agenda project of defining conventions with your team. So it's a reality that most often our projects are going to involve both our team as well as other cross-functional stakeholders. And if the whole company hasn't bought into using Asana yet, but you still want to use it with your team, it's a matter of defining that convention with your team of which work is going to be tracked in Asana and which projects are going to be fully communicated in Asana, and then defining the lines of communication that you're still going to have with other teams. So we would recommend like trying to recommend other teams to come into Asana, but of course it's not always realistic in different companies. So it would just be setting clear expectations on your team of which things need to be tracked in Asana, and then where else you're going to communicate the other items.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I mean, the other thing I was just thinking about is like, you know, if it was me, if it's like something I want someone to do, but obviously maybe they don't even have an account in Asana, what I might do is like assign a task to myself just to like follow up with John in this department who's not using Asana, and just you know, set it for a week away just to follow up with him, and that way at least I can create some kind of action
Right.
based on the fact that I need to follow up with him, and at least I can manage that part of it in Asana. Even if he doesn't have an account, I can't ask him questions, I can't ask him to do something in Asana or assign him anything. At least I can give myself a task to follow up. And as I said before as well, if John or whoever you need to follow up with is like sending you emails, and that's where he's managing, or the staff are managing their communication, remember you can always forward those to Asana. So if you want to take action on those emails, you can forward those to Asana so that you can deal with them in there, rather than having to kind of split your time between your email inbox and Asana. You can kind of forward them to Asana, archive the email, get rid of it, and just manage your things in Asana, even if he's just using email. So that would be my other suggestion.
We have another question from Marcio about tags, Paul, and if you can give any basic recommendations on how to use tags and how to keep them organized.
Yeah, tags can be really useful. The way I view tags is like the ways of categorizing tasks, that might be like a way of grouping tasks across different sections. So like sections clearly define, you know, sections are mutually exclusive. So I mean, this task here can only be in one section at a time. I can't have that in multiple sections, but I might have tasks that I want to group in some way, that are from different sections. So a very basic example would be priority. I could create a tag called just like high priority, super high priority. Here we go. This is a suggested tag. So that's super high priority, and maybe this one down here, this is super high priority as well. So I can tag these emails, tag these tasks, and so I can group these tasks, even though they're in different sections, even if they might even be in. And now I could see all tasks that are tagged with super priority, not just the ones from that project, but any other project that I've marked with this tag, I could now access from this saved search up here. So that's like a very basic example of tags. I mean, other types of tags that I use personally, for example, I'll actually show you. I have a content calendar project, which is where I plan the blog posts, podcasts, and emails that I'm sending out. So here we go, we're in content. I've now got tags set up for, here we go, Asana webinar, which I'm doing today. Oh, that's not a good example. Let's look at this one, interview with Chris Simpson. I've got tags to show what kind of content it is. So it's going to be a blog post. It's also going to be a podcast. So I'm using tags to kind of highlight the type of content. The other thing that's worth noting is I'm using the custom fields, the new custom fields feature, to show the status of the post as well. So I've created a custom field called status. I've got a drop-down menu to show what status the post is in, whether it's just an idea, it's in progress, or if it's finalized and ready to publish. And the nice way about using the status here is that I can only mark one status at a time. I can't have an idea, and I can't have a task be an idea and in progress at the same time. And so Whereas if I used status down here, technically what I would have to do is remove the old one. If I had like an idea tag, I would have to remove that tag before then adding the in progress tag, which might just be a little bit cumbersome. So that's why I've decided to set this up as a custom field rather than a tag. So that's like just one example of how I'm using tags, is to categorize my content. So again, I could just click on this tag and I could see all the blog posts that I've got planned at once, or I could see all of the podcasts or anything else.
Right. And Marcia would like to see, would you mind showing how you added that custom field really quickly?
Yeah, of course. I'll do that in here. So in the project settings, I can click on the drop down up here and I can use the add. Oh, do I not have the option here?
Because you're a guest in this organization,
Oh,
you have that option. Sorry.
I'll switch back to my workspace. Okay, so for
And so
example,
Marcia, this is a premium feature, so if you're in your premium organization or premium team and you're a member of that space, you would see what Paul is doing now here with the Manage Custom Fields option.
So here we go. I've now got the Manage Custom Fields option up here. So this is the existing field that I have. I could create a new one. Maybe I'll just call it priority.
Right.
Look, that's actually a suggested one that I've previously used in the past. I'll create a new one anyway, just so you can see what the creation, how it looks. I can then select what type of field it is. I can say maybe I want to use down like I used for the other one, and now I can actually specify the drop-down options. I could have an open text field, or I could have a number. Numbers are quite good as well because it lets you sort tasks by the number. So if you have, like, for example, if you have a project for managing client prospecting, like a sales project where you're managing new clients that you're trying to close, you could have a custom field called like deal value or sale value or client value or something like that just highlights like how valuable is this deal, how valuable is this client, and then you could say, you know, this is like $1,000, $10,000, whatever it might be, and then you can sort your tasks by the size of the deal to just try and create that sense of priority. So yeah, you've got those different options there, and with the drop down, so you can have like high priority. And I can even set a color as well. So I could say high priority is red because it's really important, whereas low priority might be green or blue or something. So that's how you can set up the custom fields.
Fantastic. Thanks for showing that. And so, Paul, we only have about 4 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we're able to go over the resources that you have available for everyone moving forward.
Great. Okay. So as I said earlier, I do have a cheat sheet available which basically summarizes everything that I've discussed. So here's the link. Kate's going to include this in the follow-up email that goes out after this webinar. So the email that it'll have the replay of this episode. There'll also be a link where you can download a cheat sheet. So it's on my website. You can, when that loads, you can just sign up, drop in your name and email, and I will email you a cheat sheet which basically summarizes all these main points. So you can get that for completely free. I also wanted to discuss, I'm actually starting some Asana group coaching later this month, next week. And so this is really exciting. First time I've done group coaching. I've done some one-on-one consulting with clients before. I'm testing out some group coaching for the very first time, so I'm looking for people who are interested in taking part in that. The program is really for people like business owners and managers who, you know, maybe you're fairly new to Asana, or maybe you just want to be using Asana better. You know, if you feel like you're only using 20% of the features, you know you can be doing more, you know you could be using it for more things. So this program is really designed for those kind of people, and it'll expand a lot more on what we've talked about today, you know, how to onboard your team onto Asana. It's just going to help you improve your team's efficiency and communication. The agenda is, it'll take place over about 2 weeks, so I've got 4 sessions planned. Each one will be sort of an hour to 90 minutes in length. We're going to go through some fundamentals of how to use Asana and training your team a bit more about what, just expanding on what we've talked about today. And then in kind of part 2, we're going to expand a lot more on just some slightly more advanced things that you can do in Asana. There'll also be an opportunity where if you want to get some one-on-one feedback on how you've set up your projects or how you're managing your account, you can volunteer to use yourself as a bit of a case study, and we can go through your account and look at how we can tidy things up. And when you sign up to the group coaching, I'll be giving you access to my private Slack channel where you can keep in touch with me. You can ask me questions at any time, Asana or any productivity related things. So that's kind of the rough agenda. I usually do one-on-one Asana consulting for anywhere thousands of dollars. Usually is kind of the price you're looking at, but for the group coaching, it's a lot more affordable if you're wanting some help. So course entry costs $4.99. You can make a one-off payment today of $49 to reserve your slot, or if you're not sure about signing up and you want to find out more, there is a link where you can sign up. I'll just show you the page quickly, and what you can do on this page if you want to have a chat with me and just find out if the coaching is a good fit for you or not. You can actually book a time on this page to chat with me. You can book a time, we can have a chat, and just I can learn a bit more about your situation, and we can decide if this is a good fit for you or not. So if you're not sure, feel free to book a time to chat with me, or if you want to reserve a spot, you can go ahead and reserve a spot for $49 today.
Fantastic, and it's sure to be full of actionable advice, just like our session was today. Thank you so much, Paul, for all of this wonderful advice and walking us through the best practices and also the functional way to use these different features. We can't thank you enough, and thank you also, everybody, for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And yeah, Katie will have a link to the group coaching sign-up page as well, where you can find out more. But thanks for having me, and look forward to doing this again soon, hopefully.
Indeed. Can't wait for that. And hope everyone has a productive week.